I was acting as a kid, you know, like summer camp acting and during school acting, and nothing jumps out that is like epically amazing, but I clearly liked it. Near the end of high school, I did a ton of improv. And at the time, there was a new thing called the Improv Olympics, which of course is now doing very well and has expanded. But I was one of the first of the groups that were doing it. And that went on to creating a couple of shows with those people. And it's interesting. I really thought I was going to be an actor because I love acting and I loved the cause of it. But let's say the business of acting strangely got in the way of the other things I really loved, which was the directing, the fight directing, the writing. And I had to make a choice, basically. So that's where, though I still think of myself as an actor and occasionally get asked to act, finding myself much more being mentoring people, fight directing, and of course, teaching. So it's really odd. And people often ask about that moment. And I think it was more evolutionary, you know, that sort of movement through time and recognizing opportunities, taking them when they come up, and also some hard, you know, let's call it walks in the snow. Like I said, realizing that a decision had to make. You can't be everything, and to get very, very good at something, you need to commit. I think this is awful to say that because, like, obviously, this is a channel for people to learn about everything, and I hate to make people think they have to give up their passions. I just mean that for me to find the place where I am now, I had to really focus, I think, on the fight directing and the instructing.
Right. You mentioned too the acting side of things. I did find in your workshops at Rapier Wit that was really well addressed. Like that it wasn't just the technical of like how to hold a gun or the action of a gun. There was a lot of I guess you'd say like sort of scene study-ish type things, or especially body language. Like for an example is if your character is just a civilian and they found a gun and now they're defending themselves, they're going to carry themselves and hold that gun much different than someone who's a trained CIA operative and has been through government and army training and all that kind of thing. So the expertise, how you hold things, how you carry yourself, are you confident with that? Those are all actor choices too. And I felt that you guys really addressed that. And it did feel like sort of a hybrid of scene study and or character choices plus the equipment and the weapons being in there too. So I do feel you addressed that as well. It's great.
Well, I'm thrilled you said that because that is really everything we're about. And I should say, just in case people think we only do guns, we do tons of sword, lots of unarmed. We're structured and set up to help people really work on what it is to be a character who's physical, in distress. Like usually you can imagine like violence is usually the ultimate in conflict. Of course, all good drama is conflict. So we just basically go right to it. And the idea that I really think is important, I was going to talk about later, but I might as well sort of start it here, is we train so hard to get very good at skills. And what I find most interesting when I'm building my scenes with my actors as characters is you have all of these hours of training in the body that go to shit once your character gets emotional. And it's super interesting watching these finely tuned fighters start making what I call intelligent mistakes, as opposed to they're fighting, all of a sudden one sort of has a heart attack and drops dead. Like, doesn't make any sense why the fight alters and one character loses because they're so perfectly matched. And it's just sort of the director decided that person had to die at that point. I want the audience to be there step by step, following the story, feeling for the characters, and then going, oh, this guy's screwed. Oh. And you can see the character making the emotional or mental mistakes or pulling it out. That ridiculous, not to talk about sports, but that ridiculous belief that we have in the Leafs ever going to win. That, you know, you still have this sort of feeling, right? Maybe this is their year, even though, the guy's had all those wounds. Sorry, man. I just thought I'd point that out. But you know what I mean? And so the irony is learning the skills is physically taxing and mechanically challenging. But I would suggest what makes it really amazing to watch our actors is the emotional content. The emotional content with the audience. You were talking about with Shakespeare and how you have this incredible emotional rush when you're doing it. What do you think you're getting back from the audience as you're feeding them, right? And you also really need to play these characters that are fundamentally different from the beginning of the scene to the end, particularly when the climax means either A, you've taken a life, and you may not feel good about that, right? You might be a character who is actually horrified that they've done that ultimate bit of violence, or they might feel vindicated. Or of course, you're the other side of it where you're bleeding out and you realize everything, your whole life was pointless as you die to this SOB, right? So there's some things that I think are so worth functioning, so worth discovering, and the function of what it is to be these people. And then I've noticed that the people we work with are phenomenally excellent in scenes where there's no violence, because you can feel the potential in them of the capability of violence as the character, or you can see that their choices are stronger because they've already made other choices in other scenes that allow them to go further than if they had only done standing and speaking scene study, right? So we find this super useful to motivate and activate other parts of our creative soul. And so I do think of myself as an acting teacher, as well as a fight instructor, as well as a technique teacher. And it's really great because I've surrounded myself with really phenomenal people who are all different or unique in their approach, and yet feel likewise in what I'm saying. So we have a very deep and very rich environment, regardless of who you get to teach, work with as a teacher.